So if you look at the usage, it has been used in various different forms until the Americans uh, kind of appropriated it around the 1950s and the 1960s. Properly, they appropriated it. Uh, and to a certain extent, even Frederick Hayek also played a role in libertarianism emerging as, otherwise it's been a subset of something or the other. I mean, that might look like an extremely vague statement, something or the other. So obviously I'm not going to leave it like that. I'm not going to say that this is a subset of something or the other and say that's what it is. The something or the other also will have to be explained. Now, um, you know, the origins of libertarianism as a term uh, can be traced back to the 18th century, towards the end of the 18th century. Um, Late 18th century, let me make that clear. And it was actually some kind of a free floating term. And if I have to explain the whole concept of libertarianism, unfortunately, I'll have to also discuss with you a bit of, not a bit, yeah, a bit, anarchism, syndicalism, and socialism. Including Marxism. First, let me disabuse you of one of the popular beliefs that is held in Indian society, that anarchism is a movement uh, which is an offshoot of Marxism, and that is very, very untrue. Anarchism is a much, much older movement than Marxism, and anarchism existed in different forms, and initially, sorry, anarchism was seen as left wing politics. That is what it was seen as. So you could basically confuse something for something else and think that if it wasn't for the great this thing of what should we say, if it wasn't just give me a minute, please. Sorry, very sorry about that. Had a bit of a dizzy spell. What was I saying? I think I was saying anarchism. Anarchism was, yeah, and both libertarianism and anarchism initially were seen as left-wing politics, and you will find that there is the adoption of libertarianism, not adoption, actually, co-option of libertarianism into individualism in the late 19th century. But I'll come to that. Let's not jump the gun. If you look at uh, libertarianism, it was all about, initially, it was all about freedom. And it was all about lack of any coercive apparatus in society that would impede the freedom of individuals or freedom of people. Let me not say individuals, because then that'll give the meaning of individualism, which it wasn't. So freedom of the people. So the earliest form of anarchism was in the field of economics. Okay, anarchism first was in economics, and it later on made an appearance into the political sphere. Okay, so the initial forms of libertarianism were actually called anarcho anar okay, that is how they were described, and that is why it's left wing. It is left wing. uh, so anarchism is not an offshoot of Marxism. Anarchism existed prior to Marxism, many years prior to Marxism, and later on, it's due to people like Bakunin and to a certain extent Proudhon. You'll find that there is an overlap, okay, of sorts between what do you say? There was an overlap of sorts between Marxism and anarchism, but the anarchists disagreed with with Marx and the Marxists about the setting up of a dictatorship of the proletariat after the revolution to after the revolution to set up they disagreed with the setting up of the uh, I'm sorry, they disagreed with the setting up of the dictatorship of the proletariat. Now, because of that, this anarchist libertarianism also gained another reputation, which came to be called communist libertarianism. But perhaps the defining moment in this whole thing about libertarianism, the first defining, not the total defining thing, uh, that was something that happened with a Frenchman. A Frenchman by the name of Joseph de Jacques. there should be an accent aigu on the E, which I can't put here, I'm sorry. Joseph the Jacques, who started a journal in French in New York. Okay, who started a journal in French in New York. The journal was called Le Libertaire. Not what am I saying? With what is called an eyebrow. This is the main head. Then you have an eyebrow behind, below it, and that was the Journal du Mouvement Social. So the main head read La Libertaire, and then it said Journal de du Mouvement Social. Now, this is what led people to believe that this is the origins. If you ask an American today, the American will tell you that this is the origins of libertarianism. And the Americans are quite foolish. They believe that libertaire is a coined word. They don't believe that a word like libertaire existed in French, obviously, because they didn't know French. Okay, and so they are quite comfortable in believing that libertaire is a coined word, a word coined by Joseph de Jacques. That's what is the usual belief, which is not true, because the noun form of the English word liberty, okay, the noun form of that in French again, the liberté should have an accent or an accent on the last E, otherwise you don't pronounce it. In the French language, unless you put an accent on top of a word, that too towards the end of the word, then you don't pronounce, then you'll just read it as libert. You will not read the last part. So it is liberté with an accent. This way is an aigu, accent aigu, and frater liberté, égalité Egalite, again with an accent, and fraternité. They're all nouns. So the noun form of liberty in French is liberté. The adjective form the adjective form of liberté, the noun, is libertaire. It's, I think, actually written with TAs, TRs. Yeah. Or is it one R? Let me check that and get back to you. I've forgotten my French. I used to be pretty fluent in French. I've forgotten most of it now due to disuse. And it's just a matter of time before forget I forget English as well. Libertaire is a double, or I don't know. And it's a very funny thing because the Americans, uh, their civil war that was happening at that particular time between the Confederates and the Unionists. This journal was, by the way, brought out in 1860. Okay, so you will find that, no, RRE doesn't sound right. I think it's a single R. Let's hope. Let me just check it up. Uh, so 1860, around this time the Civil War was on, and the Unionists, they for some reason decided to adopt the French form, which they confused to be the Latin form of a soldier. And this is, I think it's RRE, Legionnaire. Is it RE or RRE? Anyway, let me confirm that and tell you. Till then, please keep the spelling on hold. They were using this whole thing of libertaire, legionnaire. Now, in English, if you translate the adjective, it becomes a legionary in English. In French, it is legionnaire. Okay, now the Roman soldiers were called legionnaire, and each attachment, as it is called, of soldiers was called a legion. Okay, in Latin it was a legion or a legion. Either of the pronunciations is okay. Legion is, I think, the more correct in the context of Latin. In French, it is legion. And this is a word that you'll also find in the Bible. God and his legions, The legions of God are supposed to be the angels and the various archangels who are there under him: Gabriel, Michael, Peter, all these people. So it, no, legion, what have I done? It's not here. Yeah, that's more like it. And where is the I? Now I can't put the I. Oh God, it's very frustrating teaching like this. Sorry. Um, Legionnaire is what it is. NAI. And if you look at that, uh, the Americans started calling the Unionist soldiers legionnaires. If they wanted to call them in English, they should have just called them legionaries. But for some strange reason, they called them legionnaires. Anyway, so to come back to this libertaire bit, um, I suppose you know that, New York State is on the upper side of the United States of America, the northern side. It's also on the East Coast, but it's also, and if you move across New York, then you go into uh, Canada and the French parts of Canada. And therefore, there was a lot of French influence at that time, even in New York. So that's why La Libertaire started off in French. And Joseph de Jacques, Joseph de Jacques corresponded, I'll have to write the name, with, let me give you his full name: Pierre Joseph Proudhon, who was an anarchist and also a believer in the usufruct. The Americans say usufruct. We can say usufruct. It is a combination of use and fruit. I'm not going to describe the usufruct uh, economy to you fully. What it simply means is that you will do farming, you will have labor, the labor will not be paid I mean, he will be paid money to the extent that he has contributed to the farming and the produce that comes out of that farming. So this was some kind of going back in time. In fact, sometimes the laborers were paid not even in money. In Usufruct Economy theories, they were theories, they didn't take shape. They said, you let us simply pay the laborer a certain amount of, what do you say? Let's pay the laborer a certain amount of the fruits of his own labor, not fruits as in exact fruits, the actual fruits, but the fruit of his labor. So let him take it from the produce. So there are these two schools, one which says give money and the other which says give him what he has worked on, uh, give that to him. So that is the usufruct economy. And Proudhon was a believer in that, of the usufruct economy. And there was a to and fro correspondence between Joseph de Jacques and uh, Pierre Joseph Proudhon. So what you find here is the emergence of what people called um, socialist libertarianism, because Proudhon, despite his anarchism, despite his believing in human freedom, didn't believe in individualism. He believed in socialism, and that is why the anarchists like Bakunin and himself and Kropotkin, they all are seen together with Marx. Okay, so socialist libertarianism emerged. Uh, some people were calling it anarchist libertarianism. This was also used. And then there was the usage of, like I said, oh, I put this here already, communist libertarianism, apart from, and some economic theorists still use this construct, usufruct libertarianism. That's what they call it, because they believe that there are no politics at all. The only thing that is there is economy, and that to a very, very limited, primitive form of economy. And therefore, it should be called usufruct libertarianism. Now, the moment Proudhon came into the picture, Joseph de Jacques, Joseph de Jacques was seen as an enemy of individualism, because Proudhon was an established socialist, and therefore the La Libertaire, I think it's a double R. Something tells me it's a double R. Uh, will La Libertaire uh, disappeared from America, and in the 1890s made an appearance in the francophone parts of Africa, and in this case specifically specifically in Algeria, and the person who revived it is someone called Sebastian Faure. Sebastian Faure is the name of the person who revived it in Algeria, but it had no significant contribution to make. But what you have to remember is that people still kept talking about, incidentally, this Usufruct Libertarianism also has another name. So let me put that uh, here. Instead of putting that name again, I typed anarchist liberalism. Uh, the thing that the name that uh, Usufruct libertarianism had is is also um, mutualist libertarianism, not when you're writing with. Well, if you really want to know why it was also called mutualist libertarianism, that is because of the fact that Proudhon uh, was a mutualist economist. In economic terms, um, a mutualist is one who basically believes in two parties mutually benefiting. That's why he was also called a socialist, despite the fact that they didn't want a state and all that kind of stuff. Okay, he was still called a socialist because of the fact that he believed that the usufruct uh, economy was mutually beneficial for the one who owned the land Unlike the Marxists who believe that all means of production, including land, because land is also a means of production of agricultural produce, he didn't want individual ownership there. But uh, Proudhon differs from Marx uh, in this. He says it can be owned, land can be owned by someone, but the worker will have to get the full benefit that is due to him from the person who holds the land. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And that is why his kind of thought was called mutualist anarchism. And since uh, Joseph de Jacques corresponded with Proudhon, it also came to be called mutualist libertarianism. Some people even called it, like I said, usufruct libertarianism. Both will mean exactly the same thing. There is no difference. They are socialist libertarianism. Yes, again, mutualist, socialist, usufruct. They are all the same. Communist libertarianism, no. That is Marxists looking at maximizing freedom in society. In a communist society where there is no means of ownership of anything. Okay, so again, anarchist, well, um, we'll discuss that later, I think, because I'll also have to talk about syndicalism and all that. So anyway, so please remember that La Libertaire is not the reason why the word libertarian came. The word libertarian was used by him as an adjective instead of the noun form. It could have been la liberté also, but he preferred to use la libertaire. He didn't coin that term. It's the adjective form. Anyway, so having hopefully established this thing, we shall now go on to try and understand how this word was, this ism itself was appropriated uh, by what is called the right wing. So it's a very funny, uh, literally funny, and um, it was seen as left-wing politics. It was left-wing politics until the late um, 1870s, I think, when in the late 1870s and the early sorry, 1880s. An American individualist by the name of Benjamin Tucker decided to appropriate libertarianism from the uh, left-wing economists and brought it into the realm of regular, or if you like, mainstream American politics out of the world of economics into the world of politics. So this is a very important moment. Okay, he decided to appropriate libertarianism. He said it more than in economics. It makes greater sense in politics, and more than in the context of socialism, where the individual is always a subject of society. He said, what is the point of having libertarianism in a socialist setup? Because what freedom will you have once you have a society that is regulating you, regulating your behavior? So he said it makes no sense at all to have it in the purview of either anarchism or Marxism or syndicalism, any of these things. And he therefore said it should come out of economics into politics and into individual freedoms. So this became uh, individualist libertarianism. The libertarianism that we are dealing with today, the libertarianism that we talk about today, I mean, not in the class, I mean, in the world, this is the form of individualism. Initially, it was called very inelegantly and wrongly right-wing libertarianism. please remember, the right wing is always conservative. I also gave you the reasons for it. I'm not going to go back into it. I told you about how when the just before the French Revolution, when the Estates General, which was the name of the parliament of Estat General, which was the name of the French parliament, was convened, and all those supporting the tradition of the king and the feudal lords and all, they sat on the right, and those who didn't believe in that had to sit on the left. And I told you that it was not an accident. It was done deliberately, because in the lore of Judaism, which also comes into uh, Christianity, uh, I don't know if it does so much into Islam, but the right is considered to be powerful because most of the world, more than 90% of the people in the world are right-handers. So, in fact, in the lore of Judaism, the right hand has a name. I told you, Benjamin. So it's, well, that's probably why it was called right wing, because this man is Benjamin Tucker, right? So the right hand was called Benjamin, and it symbolized power. It symbolized power, and therefore, uh, it is also conservative. It's also conservative. Uh, so this is not right wing. My joke on Benjamin Tucker conceiving this, and so it being called uh, right wing liberalism, uh, that very pathetic joke apart, um, Benjamin Tucker was a proper individualist. There was nothing right wing about him. Okay, in fact, um, so we have to understand this whole concept as not right wing liberalism, but as individualist liberalism, libertarianism, sorry, uh, not right wing libertarianism, but individualist libertarianism. That is what we need to call it. From then onwards, you will see that the left abandoned for quite some time. It's only again in the 20th century, towards the late 20th century, you find this uh, particular. Uh, do you see the calisthenics I am witnessing on the screen? Are you also witness to it? Version 2022. That's nice. But why is he here? As it is, it's a day of distractions for me. My pain is distracting me like hell. And over and above that, I have to not visualize, I have to watch these visuals, which are very distracting, extremely distracting. Anyway, so uh, when we talk about left-wing individualism, it is now not the default setting, which was originally the default setting, but the intervention of Benjamin Tucker made individualist in libertarianism the default setting, because he said it makes more sense. It makes absolutely more sense in the context of what we call individualism, because it is the freedoms of the individual that can actually be maximized in an individualist, capitalist society. Okay, so some people also call it capitalist libertarianism. Okay, but that is a very infrequent usage, but it is something that people do use. Some people do use capitalist individualism. Uh, I'll dwell on that as we move towards the other things that we are saying. So Benjamin Tucker, not so well-known thinker of America, was somehow instrumental in getting us to use this word, this term, I'm sorry, libertarianism in the context, of uh, what should I say? In the context of individualism and capitalism. And that stuck for a very long time. It continues to exist despite the fact that there are, uh, now once again communist or Marxist individualists, libertarianists. I'm sorry about that. Okay. All right. And just in case you're wondering why it is that I am not speaking very fluently, I'm in a whole load of pain. Pain means proper pain. Proper means unbearable. So, but it doesn't matter. We'll carry on somehow. So that's how this became mainstream libertarianism as well. You can call it that if you want. But before that, a couple of more um, issues more to be talked about, a couple of more people to be mentioned. Uh, in 1955, you had an American uh, what should we call him? Um, you had an American, it should be. An American, for a lack of better name, political theorist. I'll call him that. You had an American political theorist by the name of Dean Russell, okay, who used the term libertarianism as, or not as, quarter. So I call this, or not I, people will call this the second movement of maneuver. Okay, this is the second movement of maneuver. First one, like I told you, Benjamin Tucker brought it into individualism and called it Individualist Libertarianism. And the second movement happened in 1955 with this not so well-known American political theorist, Dean Russell, uh, who decided that one should use libertarianism as being the equivalent of liberalism itself. So the Americans started using the term libertarian instead of liberal. Okay, they started using the term libertarian instead of liberal. And you must understand that libertarianism is more of an American thing than any other concept is in political theory. Right from even the left wing, which is the Joseph, uh, the Jacques, from that time till today, it's libertarianism is an American thing. You don't find libertarianism anywhere else in the world. Even though uh, Hayek is called a libertarian, I'm not sure he'll be very happy if he comes to know that he's called a libertarian. I'm not very sure of that. So we are looking at this Dean Russell maneuver, and this made it more mainstream. But people were still a little unhappy with it. 1 second, please. People were still not, when I say unhappy, what I mean is they were not contented with these two maneuvers. So there is a third maneuver which happened in the 1960s. So this is the third maneuver. This is the third maneuver. He said, libertarianism, how is it different from classical liberalism? It's not at all different. It's all individualism, free market. Americans, though they haven't found it yet, the rest of the world has abandoned the search for a free market. But the American search continues to live, and they think that one day they will have a free market. Will somebody remind me tomorrow that I should make, if I can't make it today, I'll try and make that point today. If for whatever reasons I can't make it, I'd like to make a point tomorrow, which is, if you look at Marxism, Marxism is nothing but inverted classical liberalism. Okay? It's just inverted classical liberalism. I'll talk about that if possible today itself, but otherwise I'll talk about it tomorrow. Please remind me if I don't do it today. Remind me tomorrow that I have to do it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is a third maneuver, and the third maneuver basically says that it is nothing but classical liberalism. So from the 1960s onwards, the Americans started believing in the idea that libertarianism is nothing but classical liberalism. It's another name for classical liberalism. So, and considering the fact that libertarianism till now is not associated with any thinker. Please remember that these are people who have the first person who probably could be called a thinker was Joseph the Jacques, who was a socialist, anarchist, usufruct socialist, whatever you want to call him, but he was not an individualist, so they won't count him as a thinker. Now, Benjamin Tucker did no great thinking. He only said that this is something which should be applied to individualism rather than to socialism, because in the context of socialism, he said that is a contradiction. It's a contradiction because when you have, in socialism, you have a society that's regulating the individual. Okay, so in that kind of a context, where will there be freedom? So he asked this question, which can be answered, by the way, but conveniently for him, nobody answered it. So it stuck. But he's not a thinker. He's not a thinker, right? He's somebody who carried that maneuver. That's all. Same thing you will say about Dean Russell. Dean Russell also said liberalism. But please remember that by 1955, you have so many different forms of liberalism. You have the European form of liberalism. By that we mean the continental form, the form that existed in countries like Germany, Netherlands, Finland, and to a certain extent even France, which is very different from what it was on the British Isles, which is British liberalism. So if you're just saying liberalism, what liberalism is it? Because British liberalism is utilitarianism, okay, with a bit of welfare thrown into it. But the continental tradition had a lot of welfare thrown into it, dollops of welfare. So he's not a thinker, Dean Russell. He just carried out another maneuver. Okay, this is the second maneuver. The third maneuver, Murray Rothbard was again a professor of philosophy, of political philosophy, was somebody who decided that if you leave it hanging like that as just liberalism, then it is very confusing. It's very confusing because of the fact that it is something which says that liberalism can be anything. So which form of liberalism is it adhering to? So therefore, he decided to say that it is the same as classical liberalism. And since classical liberalism, you'll understand it fully when we do social contractualists and John Locke, has very definite contours. It has very, very definite contours. He thought that he should align it with classical liberalism. And the fact that the Americans are still searching for the free market helped. So Murray Rothbard also just carried out a small maneuver, but he's not somebody who added anything in the form of thought to that. That is what
Sir,
you have.
what is meant by maneuver, sir?
Maneuver is, uh, let's say you have to take a table out of a doorway. Okay, there is a room, there is a doorway, and there is a table which is not going easily through the doorway. Then what do? You tilt it a bit, pull one side out first, then change the direction like this, then pull the other side out first, and you slowly pull it out of the room. That's maneuvering. Or if you're driving a two-wheeler in traffic, I think that's a better example. You'll see a small gap while there is a red light, and you don't want to be at the back, because if the red light doesn't, if the green light comes on and doesn't stay on long enough, uh, you will have a problem. You'll have to wait again at that stop. So what do? If you see a small space, you fit into it. And then if somebody in the front moves a little, and if you can again see a bit of space, you'll go and fit into it. That's maneuvering through traffic. Okay,
Yes,
or
sir.
even if while driving, which is a very dangerous thing, our two-wheeler specialists think they see a gap between one car and another, and they try to go in between. They don't realize that the car behind is moving. Yeah, so it can hit you. If it's a static gap, yes, you can go through. Okay, but
Yes,
in
sir.
a dynamic gap, if you try to maneuver like that, you can get hit by the car behind. So that's a maneuver.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So this is the third maneuver, which tried to give definite contours to liberalism. And perhaps the final and the most important contribution to libertarianism as such. So this is a man. Okay, this is the man we need to talk about. Robert Nozick. Since he's of German origin, you'll have to read it as Nozick. Now, Nozick, I'm going to put my neck out here and say he is the first philosopher of libertarianism as it came to be understood increasingly. Okay. Um, so that is what you need to remember. But this didn't happen arbitrarily. This didn't happen arbitrarily. This particular is directly related to okay. John Rawls carried out an unimaginable change to the whole of liberal thought. He remained a liberal, he remained an individualist, but yet he carried out far reaching changes to liberalism of any variety. If you read Rawls, you'll find his main enemy is utilitarianism. A very big portion of the book, A Theory of Justice, is actually something which is used to disprove that whole idea of the greatest happiness of the greatest numbers, which we will be doing when we come to the utilitarians. It should be called the greatest pleasure of the greatest numbers, not but people call it happiness. Um, so Rawls dedicates a lot of what he says in that book to the criticism of utilitarianism. He also uses it as criticism of classical liberalism and its derivatives, and he does criticize libertarianism as well. He does criticize libertarianism because it was now associated with the classical liberal form. And before that, with Dean Russell, it was fully liberalism. Everything about liberalism was libertarianism. So there's a critique of that in John Rawls. So you find that Robert Nozick hits back at John Rawls Okay, he hits back at his entire construct of a theory of justice. He talks about justice having no place in any form of liberalism. He talks about how redistribution is totally unnecessary. Redistribution of primary social goods. He says that the original position that was talked about by various by John Rawls was total nonsense. He says all that is uh, complete useless uh, philosophizing. So this is actually where, it is the conservatives hitting back at somebody who's being really a liberal, in the sense of trying to recast the principles of liberalism in accordance with the original principle of equality of beginning. Okay? And he's not saying have equality, he's not a socialist. He's saying there'll be inequality of consequence. That's okay. That's acceptable. But inequality of beginning is not acceptable because that is a social construct as far as Rawls is concerned. But Robert Nozick is somebody who disagrees with that whole thing. He says this is all rubbish, complete rubbish. And he uses libertarianism as a philosophical system. Okay? He uses it as a philosophical system to combat Rawlsian liberalism. As a result, you'll see that in Europe and in countries like India, Nozick is severely looked down upon. Nozick is seen as a conservative Republican, and in America, Nozick is seen as a savior who saved the world from John Rawls, or at least saved America from John Rawls and his theories. Okay, because they thought it was a horrible thing what Rawls was doing. What do you mean, give away your. Like I said, there were some people who believed in Rawls, and I told you that there was this. Initially, there was this whole thing which is uh, what was it? Affirmative action. There was affirmative action, and then there was great deal of philanthropy in the field of education and all. But please remember that after Nozick, affirmative action again changed its definition. It changed its definition. The definition that we have of affirmative action now, in the post-Nozick intervention period is all things being equal, all things being equal. That is the most important thing. All things being equal, give representation to those who are not adequately represented in various forms of employment, or mainly employment, and even scholarships for study and all that. Now, if you're saying all things are being equal, which means that these people have to be the equals, the disadvantaged will have to reach the level of those who are advantaged before affirmative action can be uh, applied to them. So they changed the whole affirmative action thing. It was no longer give representation to some people, help them rise. No, no longer that. So I deliberately gave you this example of Google. 70% of Google has female employees. Great. But how many of them are blacks? You'll hardly find a black employee in Google. You'll hardly find a black employee, a lady, a man. Rare, very, very rare. And this is a company that started with the slogan, do no evil. And believe me, this is the most evil company on the face of this earth. Everything that you do through Google is stored in servers for the next 40 years. 40 years they are going to store your stuff. They sell your interests. And those of you who are interested in media, you will see that in the future, when you have e-newspapers, depending upon the kind of articles that you have read, Google's going to keep tab on that. Depending upon what the kind of things that you have searched for, it will throw you that information. And in order to throw you that information, if you're looking for a product, it'll throw you information about that product and charge money from the chap who makes that product, from the company that makes that product. So you see, all that is rubbish. Now they have reduced in the post-Nozick period. I mean, Nozick is still around. What I mean is that once Nozick happened, then things changed. Things changed once again for the worse, not necessarily for the better. Okay, so most of what Nozick has to say is opposition to Rawls, and he's probably the first person whom we can call a thinker, even though he's very derivative. Rawls is an original thinker. Nozick is a derivative thinker, which means that, his thought is derived out of various different liberal thinkers before him. He's not very original. Rawls is very, very original, not Nozick. But nevertheless, he's a thinker. So you can consider him to be a thinker of the libertarian variety. As of now, he's the only one. Not many people have followed in his footsteps. Though some people will say Robert Putnam's thought is a bit like Nozick's, I humbly disagree. I humbly disagree. He is nowhere near being like Putnam. Nowhere near like being Nozick, Putnam. So what are the contours of like I told you, he's derivative. So first, let's emphasize. He talks about a minimal state, which is what John Locke also talked about. But there was a sovereign in the minimal state of John Locke. You'll understand that better when I teach Locke. Like I said, this is a very completely rubbish kind of paper to teach. Very sorry to say that. Very, very sorry to say that, but it's absolute rubbish. Okay. And without doing all those things, how can you do this? And okay, so the thing is that he's talking about a minimal state. There's no sovereign here. There's absolutely no sovereign here. That is the difference with Rock. Rights, individual rights. Individual rights are sacrosanct and inviolable. They are inviolable. Okay, not even through constitutional amendments. So, individual rights are inseparable from the individual under any circumstances. Okay. Then comes perhaps an original contribution. The original contribution he makes is so this is his main contribution. This is the sum total of his philosophy, if you want to call it that. Now, what is this minimal state? Let's go one by one. The minimal state is one which has no powers. No powers. And so, what does he call it? The state, he says, should be called Night Watchman State. Try to understand the significance of the night watchman. If you even say somebody is a security guard state, okay, let's put it that way. A security guard might have a gun. He might have a gun. But a night watchman, what is he going to do? He's only going to stand there with a torch and see if somebody's coming to steal somebody's property. So keep a watch on the property. That is the only function of the state. So to call it individualism actually is a bit of a misnomer, because this is not something that is applicable to all. You're not saying that all kinds of individuals will get an opportunity to do something for themselves, which is something you will find in Locke, the trickle down effect. This man is not even bothered about that. It is only about the property. They are the individuals who matter. The other individuals are, in fact, not to be protected by the state, but they are to be, uh, what should I say? Uh, they are to be kept under watch so that they don't do something to these individuals who are propertied. So that is the meaning of the Night Watchman State. It's a state only for the propertied. He says individual rights are sacrosanct and inviolable. He says you can't change them through constitutional amendments. So what he's doing here, he is rejecting two notions. He is rejecting Rawls is handicapping people and redistributing. That's his political rights. Okay? He's handicapping people as those who have had no access to, like, all the good things that I talked about, the primary social goods. So that is for him not acceptable. So when he talks about individual rights, then what are they? It's again purely the property. Now, this is the most amazing part, the third one. The right to property is an absolute right, and it cannot be subject to scrutiny, which is what Rawls did. He said, you primary social goods, since you have captured them and kept them with you, held them with you, other people had no chance to develop. He says that's all rubbish. It's all rubbish. And he says property should not be taxed for anything other than provision of public facilities like street lamps, roads, those kind of things. Otherwise, no. There is no question of taxing the property. Why? That is the most interesting thing about Nozick. He believes if Marxism is classical liberalism turned upside down, then Nozick's libertarianism is Marxism turned upside down. He believes that the primary, most primary form of private property is ability. Did I send you people that video of uh, pigs, 3 different ones, the live performance? Did I send it to you? Anyone? Padma, did I send it to you?
Yes, sir.
Did you see it?
No, I haven't watched that one.
Watch it,
Okay.
because towards the end, there are statements of uh, Trump that are prominently displayed. Okay, though he's playing in Mexico, and they are originally in uh, uh, the Mexican language. Uh, the English translations are also there, except for one which ends with Trump is a pig. That is not translated into English, but otherwise it's translated into pig. I mean, all other things are translated. And in the translations, you will find him saying things like, the beauty of me. These are all actual statements, by the way. I thought he was making fun of him. And then I found that these are the real statements. Okay. He says, the beauty of me is that I'm so rich. And he says, I am rich because I deserve to be. These are all Trumpisms that he quoted there. That is the kind of thing that you find in libertarianism. Okay, you'll say that my most primary form of private property is ability, which means if I have the ability to make money, I'll make money. If you don't have the ability to make money, too bad. I'm sorry for you. I'm sorry for you. And Trump once made a very interesting statement in which he said, if you take all the billionaires' money, if you take all the billionaires who are there in the world, you take their money, distribute them among everyone. Okay? Distribute them among the whole population of the world. he said by the evening, all that money will go back to whosoever you took it from. It'll go back to all those people only, because they have made money because they can. The others have not made money because they can't. So even if you give them that money, they can't do anything with it. It'll all come back to the billionaires. That is the kind of thing Nozick is talking about. Nozick is saying my elementary, most rudimentary form of private property is the ability to make money. And it is because I have that ability, I make money. Those who have money have shown that they can make money. Those who don't have money have shown that they cannot make money. And when he was asked, what about inheritance? He said, yeah, what about it? So they said, but how is that if somebody has inherited billions and become a billionaire, how is it according to his ability? He says the answer is simple. If he has the ability, he'll retain that billions. If he doesn't have the ability, then he'll lose the billions. Somebody who has the ability will take it away from him. So he said an inheritance doesn't stay with you unless you have the capability of keeping it with you, which he says is akin to earning money. Otherwise, somebody will take that away from you. So he says that is my answer to your question. A very simple, straightforward answer, which of course is rubbish, we all know. But Nozick became a very big name. Libertarianism became a very big name. And I told you that liberal, the usage of the word liberal in America is very different from how it is used in the rest of the world. It is the opposite of conservative, and liberals are not seen as necessarily good people by the conservatives. They're not seen. So that happened because libertarianism took the place of liberalism philosophically. So liberalism or liberal has been pushed down to just being an attitude. Just an attitude. It's not a philosophy. It's now been pushed down to being just an attitude. Because libertarianism is the philosophy. That is the philosophical system. Liberalism is tolerating all this rubbish, LGBTQ, supporting the blacks, supporting the Hispanics, supporting the uh, Puerto Ricans. All those people, they are liberal. Libertarians are all right. They are fine. I'll stop here today. I can't go on anymore. And That's enough for today. Now, what I want to do is, I've now done enough in case they announce a, what should I say? If they announce an internal, I've done enough to ask you questions. So I want to complete Aristotle, which I didn't in the first unit of the Western political thought, in the second unit, sorry, of the Western political thought thing. Let me complete Aristotle and then I'll come back to neoliberalism and to ecologism. There's nothing to teach in ecologism and all that. Neoliberalism, maybe if I start dwelling into the policies of Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher and how they promoted individual enterprise and asked people not to look for employment but go for enterprise. That's what neoliberalism is. Actually, there's nothing much to teach in that. There's hardly anything in it to teach, strictly speaking. So let me finish Aristotle and then we'll go on to this and finish that again. I hope that's okay with you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions?
No question.
Sir, Nozick is considered as blood brother of John Rawls. Why is it?
Blood brother. By who? Who said this?
I have heard.
Possibly because he's also talking. He's blood brother, but he's older brother. Not younger brother. A more radical brother. Who, at least Locke. You said Locke, right?
Nozick.
No, Nozick and Locke, right?
Rawls.
Rawls. No, he's not a blood brother of Rawls. They're sworn enemies. They're sworn enemies. He's not a blood brother. Come on. They are completely North Pole, South Pole. Whoever wrote that piece of rubbish, is it in the Telugu Academy book?
No, sir.
No. Please don't elevate Nozick to the stature of Rawls, first. Second, even if you say he is equally profound, he's very, very different. There is no brotherhood between the two of them. Let me assure
Excuse me,
you.
sir.
Sorry?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
I want to ask about internal exams and assignments.
See, those have to be announced by the department. I can't announce them. Who am I? I'm just a lecturer.
No.
No, seriously. That has to come from the head of the department. It has to come from the office of the head.
Okay. And about assignments, the paper
See,
that we have.
even that has to come from the head of the department. Whoever has announced to you that please do your assignments now has been completely, they have overstepped their limits and asked you to do something. It is not their responsibility to tell you. So let me explain that in a minute. What I want to tell you is an assignment has to be done after a significant amount of your syllabus has been completed. Okay. Now, if you
Okay.
take how much syllabus I have completed, if you look at it, I have not even completed one unit in political ideologies, right? I have not completed the second unit in, what should I say, uh,
Simple.
Western political thought. How will you write an assignment? On what will you write an assignment? Are you going to write an assignment on Locke when I have not taught it to you?
Okay.
That means you're just going to write it from somewhere, which is okay. If you want to do that, do it. I'll be very honest with you. I have in the first semester been given assignments from Marx and from other people who are there in the second semester, and I have accepted them because there's nothing else I can do. But if you try to understand, this is sabotaging the system. It's a complete sabotage of the system because you're not supposed to copy and write. Even if you do, okay, you copy from somewhere and write. But you have to understand what it is that you're copying. You just can't say A and D and just write and. You have to understand what you're writing, isn't it? And that's the reason why we also have a seminar presentation, which is towards the end of the semester. These assignments and that seminar presentation are usually done at the end of the semester. Just because somebody is in a hurry, I want to get away with this, I want to do this, I want to finish this. No, that's not the way to do things. How can I ask you to write an assignment? On what will you write? You can write only on the Greek thought, that too only up to Plato, only up to Plato, because I haven't taught you anything else other than that. Okay, I've taught you hermeneutics of Dilthey, that, and the various meanings of the term ideology, the complexities of the term ideology, and then I have done Rawlsian liberalism, and today I have done libertarianism. And these are two different papers, they're not the same paper, please remember that. So how can you write an assignment now when I have not done anything fully? If I at least complete 2 or 3 units of your syllabus, then it makes sense. It makes sense to write. But if you are in a hurry to write, I have no objection. I have no objection. You want to get on with it and finish it off, why leave it to the end? Right now, we are not doing anything else. We want to write, write. No problem. No, I'm serious. I'm serious.
Okay, sir, you are right. Okay.
No,
You're
if you
right.
really want to write, go ahead and write. I have no problem
No,
with
no,
that. No, I'm not
no.
angry or anything. Please don't think. I'm saying it very genuinely. If you want to write, write. But
Your
at least,
direction is very true,
sorry,
but because some professors tell us that
I
write
understand
assignment.
that. I understand that.
Okay.
I
Just
understand that.
shall I ask you?
No, I know who has told you. Okay.
Okay.
I know who has
Okay,
told
thanks.
you. And
You're
if
right.
you actually, it should come from the head. And I also know that the head has informally told you, you can go ahead and write. I know that as well. Now, if you're going, that's why I'm saying I cannot stop you from writing when the head himself has told you to write. But I just want to tell you one thing. If you want to write your assignments now, by all means write them, but don't write more than 4 pages. It's only for 5 marks. It's only for 5 marks. So you don't have to write 15, 20 pages for 5 marks. 4 pages is the maximum. 3 to 4 pages is what I want you to write. Okay? Whether you write it now or you write it later, that is your choice. I will not interfere with it. Please write, and the other thing is no typewriting. That will be in cut and paste. So you'll have to write it by hand. You have to write it by hand and keep it with you because we don't know how the submission process will be. Are they going to ask you to submit online, or are they going to ask you to submit physical copies? That we don't know. So don't start submitting. If you want to finish writing, write it and keep it. For me, you don't have to write more than 3-4 pages. You don't need to. It's a 5-mark thing. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Yeah. It has to be
Thank you
handwritten.
for the direction. Thanks.
Yeah. And please do not submit it now because nobody has told us how to submit it. Is it going to be online? Is it now we have a vice chancellor, which we didn't have. So God knows what he's going to decide. So right now it has been running in an ad hoc manner. Now with the vice chancellor in place, we don't know. We might have some proper directives about when to do what, how to do them. So you can write and keep them, but don't submit them. Any other questions, please? Any other questions? All right. Please, I forgot by mistake, I put the evening class, which is on Gadamer, hermeneutics. I put that on the other thread, the meeting. I was in so much pain that I didn't even know what I was doing. So I put it on the other thread. So please do join that because that's part of the curriculum. Gadamer is part of the curriculum. Okay. So join the evening meeting. And he again won't take long because Dilthai is the one who established the whole thing. So Gadamer, we'll talk about him, but it won't take too long. And I won't last long. As it is, I'm gone. I don't even know. So from tomorrow, please check because the college is opening or the university is opening. So from tomorrow, I will be putting the notification in the MA previous or what first SEM group or whatever it says. Okay. As I used to put originally, So please check that for the link. Check that official group, this thing for the link. I hope I'm clear.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you
sir.
so
Okay,
much.
sir. Thank you.
Thank you.